Hey everyone, I'm Mark,
I'm Logan.
and today we're talking about not killing players, but keeping it deadly with monsters. If you haven't subscribed, be sure and subscribe because next week we're talking about not killing players, but keeping it deadly with traps. So, Logan, it's hard sometimes to plan for a monster encounter. You know, we want to keep it heavy, like we want there to be a danger, element of danger. Death could be around any corner, but at the same time, a TPK is not all that fun.
That's true. That's true. And we talked before about the importance of death in D&D.
Yeah.
The risk and the challenge of the game is what makes it so fun. If it's too easy, then why play? You know, if it's too easy, it's not fun. But at the same time, if it's too hard, it's also not fun.
Right.
As a DM, it's up to you to help your players find that sweet spot of a challenging encounter that is both exciting and, well, challenging. And to help to keep almost like a rating on these challenges. Luckily, Wizards of the Coast has provided us with the challenge rating system. So we know what level our players are, what difficulty to follow. They give it to us in the Monster Manual.
Oh.
Page 9.
What's the CR rating like? What's that mean?
Well, let's check it out. A monster's challenge rating tells you how great a threat the monster is. An appropriately equipped and well-rested party of 4 adventurers should be able to defeat a monster that has a challenge rating equal to its level without suffering any deaths. For example, a party of 4 third-level characters should find a monster with a challenge rating of 3 to be a worthy challenge, but not a deadly one. And then it goes on through experience points and how to calculate of challenge ratings and experience and
Yeah, all I'm hearing is blah 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 math. Now,
it's a lot of
actually,
math.
yeah. So the CR rating, everyone kind of complains that the CR rating is broken, but honestly, in all fairness, you try putting a number rating on all these monsters. There's a lot to consider. So today we're going to talk a little bit about those things you need to consider in planning for this, and also how to kind of adjust that to kind of make it. You can start with the CR rating as a kind of a guideline and then go from there. So, but some of the things to consider when you are planning these encounters is you need to think of things like how many monsters are there versus a party. If you've got a small party of like 3, maybe you don't want to hit them with 10 monsters unless they're like, you know, low hit point monsters or something. That's a possibility. So you need to think about that ratio and how that's going to work out. And sometimes it could work in favor of the characters like monumentally. Like it could be that if you had 5 players and 3 monsters, that the number of hits that those people get versus the monsters, that can really start to be a thing. So you kind of have to balance that out.
Yeah, the ratio of monsters to players is key. You could also be struggling with the thoughts on quality versus quantity. You could have a party of 10, but if you have one solid monster that challenges them all, like think of a Hydra. It's one monster, but with 18 heads or whatever. You know,
that's true. That's
gonna
true.
put
Number of
attacks
attacks really does matter. Yeah, it's like the equivalent of multiple. Good point. Very good point.
Quantity versus quality with ratio. And one thing that will really establish the quality of the players, no matter the quantity, is the resources that they are dealing with.
Okay.
This is where you take into consideration of how well rested the party is. Are they at full health? Do they have their spell slots or other abilities?
Right.
You know, if the party is knee deep in the middle of a dungeon, they've already been through a few hits. Maybe someone's gone unconscious once or twice before.
Right.
As a DM, it's up to you to keep that challenge high, but not make it impossible for them to do anything.
Right.
You need to be keeping in mind the abilities of your players. It's not up to you to remember all the individual details that they're going through, but gauge how your party's doing. Try to read the room. Just, you know, generally keep a look at their faces, because if you say you turn the corner and see this monster, generally the expressions of, oh crap, should be enough to tell you, maybe you need to scale this one back or give them some other options instead of just straight up fighting it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Honestly, and that's something to consider, is you don't want all the encounters to be deadly. You know, while we do favor having some death around every door kind of thing, but in reality, a few softball battles isn't a bad idea. It's not bad at all. But you can't make every encounter deadly, because that would be very, very bad. And you will have a TPK. So something else to consider is the monsters.
Not that there's anything wrong with the
TPK. Yeah. It's fun for the DM. The monsters that you're fighting, are these the kind of monsters that are going to stand up and fight all the way to the death, and they have nothing to lose, or they're brave enough, they don't run from any fight? Or are they the kind that once things start going south, they're out of there. So those are some things to think about. Monsters are smart, right? They have their own motivations, why they're there, why they're in that dungeon to begin with, what they're after. So take those things into consideration when you're plotting this out. Does it make sense that they're going to fight to the death? And maybe it's fine that they run.
Yeah.
Maybe you even have a dragon, and once he gets down to a certain thing, he's like, yeah, you know what, you guys are beneath me, and he leaves, you know. So those are some things that you could do.
One thing I think of is The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Think of all the different encounters that the Bilbo and his friends face in there.
Right.
They may run to a group of orcs, wipe through them, no problem. But if they get ambushed by trolls and are all tied up, maybe instead of just, the trolls finishing them off right there, maybe the trolls want to take their time, prepare a nice meal, which gives the party an opportunity to use their skills of persuasion and performance and distraction to buy them time for help to come or aid to be summoned. I also think of Bilbo's encounter with Smaug.
Yeah.
Something way above what Bilbo could tackle.
Right.
He had to rely on his other skills.
Right.
And Smaug, being, proud and arrogant, isn't going to think, oh, I'm just going to squish this hobbit. He's not a threat to him.
Right.
He's going to take his time, toy with him.
Yeah.
And so playing your monsters with more of a sense of personality, or maybe they're going to try to make it personal. Maybe they're going to try to play with their food.
Right.
Or maybe they don't want to fight. Maybe they want to bargain.
Yeah, I like that idea. You're using other skills. It's not all about fighting every time. Sometimes you have to negotiate to get out of a situation, and it's okay to flee. I think it's important to instill a nice, healthy fear in your players that they know when to get out of dodge. Reminds me of in Critical Role, there was a big scene where these not one, not two, but 3 dragons attacked the city of Amon, and it was a really powerful scene.
Pretty traumatic. Godzilla stomping on Tokyo moment.
Right, and they were pretty quick to go, yeah, this isn't a fight we can have. Yeah, so I think that's an important thing to have, and it's okay for players need to realize that one of the options is to run from a fight. Not about, you don't have to fight everything. So some of the things when you're thinking about planning your encounters, think of these what's the purpose of the encounter? You know, is it something that are you wearing down their resources? Are you trying to take away spell slots? Are you trying to get them where they're almost on death's door?
To test your players, to push them to the limits.
Exactly. Is that what you're trying to do? Or are you just introducing a big bad evil guy where he's going to come in, maybe early in the campaign even, and they definitely can't fight this thing, but to kind of put a healthy fear into them, and then it may fight maybe around and then take off, or maybe it doesn't even fight, but what's the purpose of that encounter? So you need to think about, or is it just something to kill and to wade through? Not a bad idea to give them easy fights too, to make them feel like superheroes every once in a while too. So
and that's also a good way as a DM to gauge the power of your party. And think about the challenge rating of the monsters. What about the challenge rating of your party?
Right.
I mean, that's a good way to gauge where they're at. And if you're trying to tune encounters and prepare things for the next session, maybe you look back and see, how quickly did they wipe out that party of kobolds, or how unfair was that battle with the Medusa? It's good to look at ways to learn from your own experiences as a DM and the experiences of the party.
Right.
But Mark, if you still want to use that Medusa, or you still want to use that group of kobolds, what are some tips and tricks to allow us to use the monsters we want to, while still keeping it balanced in the game?
All right, so these are some things you can do either ahead of time or even on the fly. You can kind of adjust them going into the fight, or as as the fight's going on, you're like, wow, this isn't going well. So some of the things you could do is you could raise the hit points. As you look, you're like, wow, they're just wading right through this guy or these guys. You can raise the hit points of the critters, because if you notice, a lot of them have a D roll or whatever. So they are adjustable. You can go up or you can go down. Like if you're like, wow, they're really having trouble with this. Looks like they might die because this is. You can usually start to gauge that I planned this well and it's going the way I wanted to, or you go, it's definitely not going the way I wanted to. You can do that
for good or bad.
And they wouldn't know that. They wouldn't know if you're adjusting the hit points behind
the beauty of the DM screen.
That's right. And another possibility is the armor class. You can adjust the armor class. So it feels like they're hitting these things pretty easy. You can make that armor class higher. Those are some things you can do ahead of time or on the fly. What else can they do?
One thing they can do, Mark, is mess around with damage dice. In the middle of a fight, and this is where you can add your narrative flair with all these different elements that we're talking about. If your orc is getting jacked up, and maybe this is supposed to be the big bad general of the army, and he's not doing enough damage, Maybe as a bonus action at the start of his turn, he says a magic word and he lights his sword on fire. And you add 2d6 fire damage into that.
Fire.
You could do this
Fire
any
makes-
number of ways.
Fire makes everything better.
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
And you can do this any number of ways for pretty much any monster.
Mhm.
It could be as simple as they step back and they just get ticked off. And in a way, they go into a rage, which could lead to, other things you could do. You could give them extra attacks or resistances, abilities like regeneration, maybe because if players have second wind and key points, give that kind of stuff to the monsters. Let them get crazy and creative and unique, and that will lead to some really fun encounters.
Yep, love it.
But if maybe one monster or this couple monster are just getting wiped out by your party,
Right.
Could you bring in more monsters, Mark?
Yeah, you can bring in. They can just ring a bell, run over and hit a bell, and they summon more, or they holler or something, and more.
Mm-hmm.
You can add more to the fight. They don't have to be like a lot of things. It could be like little minions that are really low hit point thing, but the sheer number of them could be like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
And that actually is kind of cool. Like if you had low hit point minions as they wade through them. It's kind of a good feeling when you can wade through things like that. So, but it also gives it just ups the encounter very quickly and very easily.
It may give a chance for the boss to escape.
Yeah.
Or it may give the chance for the boss to see it and be like, all right, hang on, time out, let's work this out.
Right.
Like there's more ways than one to finish it.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
it could give a chance for the boss to go Super Saiyan.
Yeah, and
Wipe
there's
them out.
there's another option too. Is like they could have lair actions if you find them, if they're fighting them actually
Lair.
in their lair. Or all of a sudden they might realize, hey, you know what, that one troll guy looks like he looks a little more epic than the other guy, less because he's legendary and he has legendary actions. And so some of those things you can do to beef it up. And so those are the kind of things that help you to make the encounter more deadly, and hopefully that will satisfy that goal of making it challenging but not cheap. And with that, class dismissed.